Haiti, not just about the current crisis following the earthquake, but about the long history of, frankly, colonial behavior of the United States and other developed nations toward Haiti. We have too often treated Haiti as a resource to be used rather than a land filled with dignified, competent, creative people. The second independent nation in this hemisphere after the United States, 1804, led by slaves overthrowing their slave masters, which frightened the United States at a time when slavery was still legal here. But Haiti led us in important ways. We're connected as human beings. And the current wretchedness of Haiti is a reminder that we're all connected.
Thank you. And in regard to that, I noticed when I was looking through, and I recommend this to all of you on the Episcopal Church website, you find a lot of your addresses and statements, which I found really interesting. And one of the things I found interesting was the day after that prayer service, you were delivering in New Jersey an address on the occasion of Martin Luther King Day. About a week before the prayer service in Haiti, you were delivering a sermon in Liberia. And I wonder if you would expand your comments that you were just making to the case of Liberia, a country that's further from our shores, but not necessarily further from our history.
Oh, thank you. Liberia, you may or may not know that Liberia as a nation grew out of proposals in this country to resettle freed slaves. The American Colonization Society sought to send freed slaves back to Africa, not always for the highest reasons. Some people understood it as an opportunity that would not be available to freed slaves here. Some others, I think, thought it was an opportunity to remove the problem of freed slaves, and that's how they saw it. When those freed slaves went back to Africa, they settled in the area that we now call Liberia in West Africa, largely without any connection with the tribes who were there. The people who had been enslaved here probably came from other parts of Africa. Their resettlement there involved the purchase of some land. There's a debate about exactly what happened. Some people believe that those who sold the land or offered the land thought they were renting it, leasing it. Others believe they really did buy it. In any case, they pushed out the people who were already there, or they entered into a place that was already pretty well populated. That development in the early 1800s led to a long-standing division between the people who resettled there, called Americo-Liberians, and the native peoples. And class distinctions developed. The Americo-Liberians tended to be wealthier and better educated, and they largely ran the government and the businesses. And over the decades, that eventually led to the violence, the civil war in Liberia that really has only been resolved in the last few years. Liberia today looks like Haiti probably will 5 years from now. You drive around, you see evidence of violence, violent destruction everywhere, but it was violent destruction perpetrated by human beings. Shot up buildings, buildings without roofs, buildings with plants growing in them, streets that are wretched, filled with potholes. The car I was in one morning drove into a pothole with the front wheel, and the driver got out, and then he wasn't thinking adequately. He drove the back wheel into it, and he couldn't get out. And along came 4 or 5 husky guys who lifted the rear end of the car out of the hole, and car was behind us, the people that in that car told us later that they watched those guys filling in the hole. That they got their tip for getting the car out, and then they filled the hole back in until another likely candidate came along. People struggle to make a living however they can. Liberia's government today is led by the first woman president of a nation in Africa, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who is doing a remarkable job of calling back to Liberia many of the educated leaders in academia, in medicine, in business, in government, to offer their gifts once again to a nation that is struggling to reestablish itself. The primary business in Liberia for decades was rubber, run by Firestone. Much of the land was dominated by American interests to extract the sap that turns into rubber. The second largest business was iron mining, also largely for export, and the benefit not of Liberians, but of others. It's a situation very much like Haiti, where the people live in poverty. The governing class reaps most of the benefits, and most of the profits go out of the country. And this nation is deeply involved in that, as are other developed nations. The church doesn't think that's necessarily a godly vision of how the world ought to be. And that's another reason we hold up stories like that. They are ancient prophetic stories. If you read Amos and Micah, you hear the same critique of the wealthy getting wealthier and the poor being ignored.
In that line, and in the context of the vision of the healed world, for another facet of global involvement, the Episcopal Church on its website, and I'm sure elsewhere, declares that the Millennium Development Goals are its top mission priority. And could you please speak to that, and particularly to the question, how it is that an arm of the Christian Church sees its top mission priority as the eradication of poverty, as opposed to what I'm sure many outside the church, and probably quite a few in it, might see as its top mission priority, something like the conversion of souls.
Thank you. How many of you have heard of the Millennium Development Goals? Okay, good. So I'm probably going to do a whole lot of explaining. They're a vision of moving toward that healed world, and that's why the church embraces them. They don't go all the way. They don't insist that everybody have a full belly every night. They don't insist that everybody have adequate housing. They don't insist that everybody, every child has access to elementary education. They set intermediate goals on the journey toward that vision, and they're accountable. They're measurable. That's not something the church is often very good at doing, which is, I think, an important reason for the church to embrace the Millennium Development Goals. They're about poverty, they're about health care for the most vulnerable, for mothers, for small children. They're about working on diseases that are preventable and treatable, like AIDS and malaria. We're making progress in a number of those areas. They're about adequate education, primary education for all children, boys and girls, and in lots of countries, boys have privileged access to education over girls. They're about clean water and adequate sanitation, and the last of the Millennium Development Goals is about the kinds of issues I spoke about in terms of Haiti and Liberia. It's about debt relief and fair trade rules and collaboration and partnership between different agencies and governments across the world. Second half of your question I've lost.
Oh, it was, excuse me, I used back the microphone. It was a sort of trying to be a little provocative about how the Episcopal Church would call that its top mission priority as opposed to what would traditionally be seen as Christian mission.
We look at what Jesus did